The Solitaire Series, Episode 2, The Nine of Spades, by Troy Lambert. Narrated by Troy Lambert. 3 months ago. To say the decor was ornate would be an understatement. The room was open save 4 giant pillars strategically placed to hold up a vaulted ceiling. There were 8 windows, 4 on each side, but no light came through them. Not just because it was midnight on a moonless Saturday. Shutters, held fast by iron latches, held the light at bay. The only light came from several torches set in holders affixed to the walls. The floor was wooden, clearly hardwood, with a faded path going down the center, and paths with the same wear leading to either side. Viewed from above, they would have formed a cross, the center one leading to the altar up front. Once a church, Stephan thought. But there are no pews now, and no one is here tonight for a holy purpose. The figure came at him, dressed all in black. It moved with grace and smoothness that didn't match its large form. Stephan prepared himself, dropping into a defensive stance and focusing. His opponent's face wasn't visible. It was hidden behind one of those ridiculous black masks like the one you see in ninja movies. His feet were clad in those silly black booties. Stephan wore a loose-fitting shirt, jeans, but stretchy ones that weren't overly tight or restrictive, and Chuck Taylor basketball shoes. They were light, had just enough traction, and were so common even if he did leave a footprint at the scene of some unfortunate, perhaps questionably legal events, no one would trace them back to him. He focused on his breathing and watching his opponent's core as he moved. You could fake a punch or a kick, but there were things that always gave away your movements first. Stephan was trained to see those things. He blocked a kick aimed for his head and blocked the striking foot as its owner tried to kick him in the kidneys, then the knee. Each blow fell short, but with every block he felt the power in that leg. This was no amateur. If he got past his defenses, Stephan would be down, hurt at least. And so the dance began. Punch, blocked. Kick, blocked. Each blow was audible with its force. Stephan stepped forward to give the elusive figure a test. Sweeping kick, low. His opponent jumped. Stephan stepped in, threw a blow intended for the sternum. It was blocked, but the figure staggered for a second. There it was. Weakness. Not a big one, but... A counterpunch came toward his head, and he ducked and covered. A good thing. Another strike aimed for his ribs and stung his bicep instead. Bruise number 1. Adrenaline meant he didn't stop. Instead, he countered himself, faked a kick, turned it into a knee that landed on the thigh muscle. Not the intended target, but it elicited an oof. Both fighters were panting now, but neither said a word. There were no strange grunts other than those of pain as they traded blows. A kick to the ribs got through, and Stephan gasped, but covered and countered with a powerful punch of his own. His opponent hissed, drawing breath between clenched teeth. He followed that punch with another, and another, body shots intended to tire as much as wound. Fast, tiny punches landed one after the other, and his opponent went purely defensive, darting free of his range and grasp, staying at a reasonable distance, trying to recover. "Come on," Stephan said, once he had enough breath to speak. "Let's finish this." The figure in black stopped moving, standing perfectly still and silent. Silent gray eyes stared through him, around him, anywhere but at him. Stephan approached, cautious. He stared. He could do anything. The black-clad menace was just standing there. The figure was taller than Stephan, with wider shoulders and a long reach. But there was something... A kick, fast and smooth, struck the side of his head. He spun, letting himself absorb the momentum he could, but the dark figure moved faster, following him. Another blow landed, this time on his shoulder, pushing him off balance again. Then a foot struck the back of his knee, sending him pitching forward. The floor rushed up to meet his face. Stephan tried to perform a shoulder roll, but missed horribly. His head struck the hardwood under their feet, and the maneuver turned into an odd flop. He rolled to his back, ready to defend, and saw the figure standing over him, motionless. "Jesus, that's creepy," he said. A foot moved, but he was fast enough to grab the slipper-clad heel, spinning it with all his strength. Stephan rolled to his feet in an effective but not a graceful manner and pursued the fight. He was on the figure in 3 quick strides. Thud went the blow to the ribs. Thud went the blow to the back. Thud went the blow directed at the head as it struck an arm. Now the figure lay, rather than stood, still. Stephan waited. No single blow had knocked this person out or done enough damage that they could not move. No, this was intentional, designed to draw him in. Who are you, anyway? I'm supposed to meet... The figure moved, spinning to its feet, a move quicker and more graceful than Stephan thought possible. Mr. Brown, the voice said. You were here to meet him, yes? But it wasn't a man's voice. It was a woman's. A hand reached up, and Stephan flinched. Relax, the voice said. With a little work, you'll do. A little work? A second later, a black mass struck him in the chest. He caught it only after it bounced off. The revealed face was round and smooth, topped by brown hair cut military style. Yes, a little work. Do you know who Mr. Brown is? Can't say that I do. In 1966, a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army wrote a letter to the President of the United States Playing Card Company, President Allison Stanley. She referenced remarks by Congressman Greg Hosmer that the Viet Cong thought images of women and the ace of spades brought bad luck. He asked for 1,000 aces for his men to leave as calling cards for the enemy in order to incite fear. Wait, Mr. Brown was in Vietnam in 1966? She held up a hand. As she did, she pulled a sweatshirt over her head. Shoulder pads and other padding came with it. The woman in front of him was tall, but she was not broader shouldered than he was. In fact, she was almost thin. That was Lieutenant Colonel Brown, not Mr. Brown. So what does... Can I finish? Do you want to know why you're here or not? Go ahead, Stephan said. He was finally catching his breath and realizing he just had his ass pretty much handed to him. At first, the Viet Cong had no superstitions about the cards, which featured the Goddess of Liberty and the spade at the time. But it boosted soldier morale, and when they'd left them laying all over the villages and jungles when they won victory, the cards soon gained significance. What does this have to do with me and meeting Mr. Brown? I'm getting there. The cards had another purpose, at least some of them. She reached into her pocket, and Stephan tensed. It's just a card. Relax, she told him. An ace of spades appeared in her hand. She flipped it around, looked at one corner, and peeled one side of the card from the other, unfolding it. Printed on the two revealed halves was a map. Sometimes these were operational maps, but many were modified during the war in Vietnam, and similar tactics were employed in the Gulf War. Modified how? Things were added, marks. Some marked certain routes, but we believe that some marked the location of treasures. Treasures? Caches of weapons, even gold and jewels that troops found and intended to go back for later. And you want me to, what, go find them for you? Not just you, others too, and not for us, with us. And I get some of the treasure that I find? That and other benefits. This is what? I don't even know what to say. Stephan leaned against a pillar. I'm afraid I need an answer now, she said. I don't get to think it over or anything? It's not that kind of deal. Besides, what is there to think over? She had a point. Stephan was currently what he would call between careers, or rather, jobs. He never really felt unemployed per se. There was always something to do. But this intrigued him. Shouldn't we wait for Mr. Brown? I am Mr. Brown, or at least I'm a member of the family. You can call me Nine. Nine? Nine of spades, if you will. Your answer? Can I ask some questions? She sighed. Only one. Stephan thought for a minute. After his last job, he had plenty of money in the bank. He could simply say no and walk away. Or he could take it and see where things led. He looked at his recruiter, as he now thought of her. She looked back. From her pocket, she pulled a red deck of cards. She started to shuffle them, her eyes never leaving his. He watched the cards move hypnotically as she cut the deck, shuffled, and cut it again. Deftly she manipulated the cards, some appearing for a moment between her fingers. How do you do that? He asked. Practice, she answered. Now, what have you decided? I don't get a question? You just asked one. Stephan stared and realized she was right. She shuffled one more time and then cut the deck, showing him the card in the middle. It was the 9 of spades. She removed that card and stuck it in her pocket. Can I ask one more? Stephan asked. You're wasting my time. When do I start? He asked. Right now, she said. Welcome to Solitaire. She shuffled the cards one more time, then fanned them out in one hand, holding them out towards him. Pick a card. Any card, she said. Stephan reached out his hand and drew. The present. Stephan woke to a pounding headache. The redhead stood over him, smiling. He struggled to get up, but found himself tied to, what? A chair. He was tied to a chair. Let me go, he said, or there will be consequences. If I don't report back, you know they will send someone else. I certainly hope so, his captor said. He noticed a bandage on her arm. His shot must have only grazed her. You're good, but I could use more training. I'm tired of hearing that. I've been training every time I'm not working for the last 3 months. Have you been successful? At working or at training? She shrugged. I'd say both, if you hadn't tased me. Ah, but I did. After I shot you. She glanced at her arm. That small thing? Stephan struggled, finding the bonds a little looser than he thought they would be. So they sent you over 60? She asked again. I told you that already. What if I gave it to you, and then some? In exchange for what? Your freedom, for one thing, and to conveniently not have found me. They'll know. Solitaire always knows. I can't do that. If you don't, you may never leave here. If I go back without you, I'll never leave this hellhole. I have a flight to catch. He almost had his hands free. He could feel it. All he needed was 1 second. He saw her for what she was. He was ready. Wrong answer, she said. The shotgun appeared just as his hands broke free. He launched himself forward. A boom sounded in his ear, then a scream followed, one barely audible over a loud ringing. His shoulder thudded into flesh. Hot metal touched his back and then fell away. As the two of them struck the floor, he heard a crunch. Silence followed. He stood and looked down. Her head was in an odd angle. Her eyes rolled back into her skull. She wasn't moving. A white corner protruded into her tiny cleavage. Something was stuck in her bra. He reached down and pulled it out. It was a playing card from a red deck, the 6 of diamonds. Stephan pocketed the card, left her behind, and started to search the house. The 60 was here somewhere. He knew it. And anything extra he found, he would keep. The end. Thanks for listening to this Solitaire series episode. Stay tuned for the next episode here or wherever you listen to audiobooks.